Hey everyone, La Cheng here from Think Global Logistics. A lot of you who import or export may be scratching your head and asking yourself, why are rates going up when the economy is in the doldrums and the stock market is crashing? Well, I'm going to give you a bit of perspective on it when we talk about market fluctuations with respect to international shipping. Precisely, ocean freight. Why? Because over 90% of the goods that we consume and we use around the world is transported by sea freight and in a metal can. I think the good place to start with this particular subject matter is give you a bit of historical background in terms of seasonalities when it comes to international trade. I've been doing this since middle of the 90s, so I've been doing this for a little bit. When I joined the industry for a better part of a decade, if not more than a decade, in fact, maybe 15 years of my career, much of this seasonality has been very consistent. And that usually comes in the form of the seasonality that sort of coincides with our holiday periods, Chinese New Year, and so forth. The traditional seasons, historically speaking, has always ranged from the low season, the mid season, and the high season. You've got February to about June, you've got the low season. You've got the June to September, you've got the mid-season, September to Christmas with the low in Christmas period, but ramps up again in January into Chinese New Year. That's your high season, okay? That's where the prices are usually traditionally at the highest. Back in those days, we're talking late 90s, 2000s, we didn't have all the massive e-commerce sites. Stores didn't go on sale 365 days of the year. They only went on sale specifically after the holiday periods or after when we finished buying all of the gifts. With that traditional season, prices adjusted and so forth. Let's just talk specifically on full container pricing. Traditionally, over the course of the decades that I've seen it, the lowest point could be as low as a couple of $100 a 20 foot. And it could be as high as probably about $1,500 a 20 foot. That's usually the range. And most of the years, the gap between the two is far smaller. For example, it could be maybe $500-600 a 20 foot compared to $1,400 a 20 foot, and that will be the gap between the low season and the high season. Unfortunately, those days are behind us. That disappeared 10 years before COVID. Why? Because all of a sudden we started seeing shops being on permanent sale. They want to rotate these massive juggernaut of supply chains that's being finely tuned to produce things at such a pace. They need consumption to keep it going. The digitization of our lives have changed the way we consume. The urgency of our need of consumption has sped up. Supply chain, as a result, has come under great stress. And it didn't also help now that the consumer has becoming a lot wiser in how we buy things. Instead of buying things for Christmas at Christmas, we're buying things for Christmas after Christmas during sale, which has also led to the permanent sales strategy by the retailers, right? You can see the behaviors change, and that's led to massive, reshuffle of supply chain and its pricing. That didn't give the shipping lines a lot of predictability in their own pricing environment. It's like a bus schedule. They're still got to run that bus, but they don't know what's going to come in from one day to the next. So how do you price a container when your forecast is unclear? So everybody, for lack of a better pun, was on the same boat. Through the lack of transparency and forecast, we didn't know how to price things. We didn't know when things were going to heat up. We didn't know when things were going to drop off. So that's why you have this high volatility across the market. And usually when there's high volatility in this scenario with sea freight, air freight wins. All this false economy of delaying has completely been wiped out by a couple of air freight shipments for goods that should never be moved on air freight. And guess what, guys? This happens still every day today. Air freight benefits when there's chaos in sea freight. Unfortunately, as a freight forwarder, which is who we are, sitting between the customer and the shipping lines, we didn't have enough pricing forecast to even quote our customers. Even now, for example, we're quoting our customers after their shipment is on a vessel that has sailed. It's all due to this fog that's created by the uncertainty of our consumption behaviors. Leading up to COVID, again, 2 years prior, I recall pricing was actually generally quite lackluster and sort of didn't venture up to the high point. There was a couple of years that went really high beyond the normal range of, say, $3,000 US for a 40-foot container, say from Shanghai to Australia. That was usually the ceiling, traditionally speaking, for a 40-foot container from China to Australia. But there were years leading up to COVID, maybe I would say maybe 4 or 5 years prior, where pricing went over that. It went close to 4,000, maybe even 4,500. Now, at that time, that was unheard of. It was just like, wow, look at the cost of a 40-foot container, right? When we used to, during the low season, we're probably maybe paying only $700, $800 for. Now we're paying $4,500. Wow, and that was already, groundbreaking in terms of the extremes that these pricing fluctuated. A couple of years prior, the economy wasn't doing that great. So the pricing were very lackluster in performance, right? And this was when, the shipping lines were pulling out every trick in their book. The first game that they will play is what's called dry docking, under the guise of repair and maintenance. What that means is they're taking something out of the service, reducing capacity. Second will be slow sailing. When something sails slow, it impacts all of the flow. Remember, all it takes is for a slight delay with one that has a domino effect that gets felt for not just days, sometimes weeks, if not months. A specific example would be the Evergrande, where it got stuck in the Suez Canal. Those effects were felt 2 years after the fact when it got stuck. The other game that shipping line likes to play is they would, incite all different types of macro conditions by way of a surcharge, saying that has impacted them somehow and some forth. All of these surcharges, most of the time, as I guess us in the middle, we can see that like, hey, we know what you're doing. You're trying to create an artificial bottleneck, boom, to keep the floor on the pricing. If we really want to be fair about it, we understand they need to make money. Demand is king, and if without demand, you'll be losing every single one of your sailings. So they'll have to take capacity out. Now we're coming closer to COVID.
It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there, seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see.